Hey everyone, tonight we're diving deep, way back into the warm, sandy embrace of ancient Egypt. Picture this. You're not scrolling through your phone before bed, endlessly refreshing social media feeds until your eyes burn. Instead, the last images flickering behind your eyelids are the day's toil in the sun-baked fields, the faces of your family in the lamplight, or maybe that unsettling image of a hippo wearing a linen kilt. Because let's be honest, dreams have always been a bit weird. And in ancient Egypt, those weird dreams, they weren't just your brain's bizarre nightly cleanup crew. They were messages, omens, or whispers from the gods themselves, or perhaps a rather grumpy ancestor with an opinion. Your job, as we'll explore, is to make sense of it all. It's a bit more pressure than just telling your mate about that dream where you could fly, only to wake up and realize, no, your feet are still very much on the ground, and you're probably late for something. Frankly, with the stakes so high, divine favor, personal ruin, the fate of the harvest, you probably wouldn't survive a week in these ancient sandals if you dismissed every nocturnal vision as just a bit of undigested cheese. The responsibility alone would be crushing. So before you get cozy, take a quick sec to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps the channel drift into the algorithms more peacefully. And hey, if you're settling in for the night, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fascinating to see how far these little historical journeys travel. Now dim the lights, maybe get that fan going for some gentle white noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. The first fingers of dawn are painting the eastern sky a soft, bruised purple over the Theban hills. You can just make them out from the small, high window of your sleeping chamber. It's cooler now, the oppressive heat of the Egyptian summer briefly surrendering to a pre-dawn freshness that carries the damp, loamy scent of the Nile. You stretch, your linen sleeping garment a little twisted around you. Another day, another stream of anxieties, hopes, and utterly baffling symbols to untangle from the sleeping minds of this sprawling city. You are a sow, a knower, though some days you feel more like a guesser. Your little mud brick house, nestled in a quieter quarter of Thebes, not far from the bustling temple district, but thankfully removed from its constant clamor, is already beginning to stir. You can hear the gentle rustle of your wife, Merritt, in the main room, likely coaxing the embers in the hearth back to life for the morning's bread. The aroma of baking flatbread, a staple as constant as the sun god Ra's journey across the sky, will soon fill your small home. It's a comforting, everyday smell, a grounding counterpoint to the often ethereal and unsettling nature of your work. You sometimes wonder if people realize that the fate of their barley harvest, as foretold in a dream, is being interpreted by someone whose own breakfast depends on, well, barley. It's a funny little cycle, isn't it? Like a cosmic joke delivered with a very straight face. You rise and perform your morning ablutions, a splash of cool water from a clay ewer. Cleanliness is important, not just for health in these crowded conditions, but for the purity required when dealing with matters that brush against the divine. Many dream interpreters, the really esteemed ones, are priests, attached to the grand temples of Amun or Thoth, performing their duties within sacred, incense-filled precincts. You, You're more of a private practitioner. You learned the craft from your uncle, a man whose interpretations were sought from as far south as Nubia, or so he claimed. He left you his collection of papyri, well-worn scrolls containing lists of dream symbols and their prescribed meanings, the accumulated wisdom, or perhaps just the most popular guesses, of generations. Historians still debate the precise hierarchy and regulation of dream interpreters like yourself. Were you all part of a recognized guild, subject to oversight from the priestly class, or were there many, like you, operating independently, their success built purely on reputation and word of mouth? For every temple-sanctioned diviner, there were likely a dozen local wise ones, whose authority came not from a shaved head and priestly linens, but from a perceived knack for piercing the veil. Merritt hands you a warm piece of bread and a small bowl of dates. Simple fare, but enough. As you eat, you mentally review your schedule for the day. Old Beck, the overseer from the nobleman Nacht's estate, is due first. He's irregular, his dreams as convoluted and frequent as the winding paths through the papyrus marshes. Then there's a young woman, new to the city, a weaver by trade, who sent word she was troubled by a recurring vision. You hope it's not another teeth falling out dream. Honestly, if you had an OUD, that's a small copper coin. For every dream about losing teeth, you could probably retire and buy a small pleasure barge. It's the ancient Egyptian equivalent of dreaming you're naked in the marketplace, universally unsettling. Your office is a small, shaded courtyard at the front of your house. A simple reed mat for you, a slightly less comfortable one for your clients. A subtle but effective way to keep appointments from dragging on too long. You lay out your tools, a fresh roll of papyrus, not the finest quality, that's reserved for official documents or spells you might occasionally be commissioned to write, but good enough for notes. Your reed pens, meticulously sharpened with a small bronze knife and a palette holding cakes of black and red ink. The black for the dream, the red for the interpretation. It's a system. Structure is important when you're dealing with chaos. Beck arrives, his face etched with the worry lines of a man who carries many responsibilities. He bows, a little too deeply, a sign of his anxiety. "Sao, may your day be blessed," he murmurs, settling onto the mat. "And yours, Beck? What troubles the sleep of the noble Nacht's household now?" you ask, your voice calm, measured. It's a tone you've cultivated over years, designed to soothe and inspire confidence. Beck launches into his tale. "It was my dream, master, not the nobleman's directly, though it concerns his lands. I dreamt I was walking through the barley fields, ready for harvest, golden and tall. But as I drew closer, the ears of barley turned to dust, and a great wind came from the west, scattering the dust until the fields were barren black earth." He shudders. "What does it mean, O wise one? Is a blight upon us? Will the inundation fail us this year?" You listen patiently, making a few notes on your papyrus. The imagery is stark. Dust, barrenness, a destructive wind, classic anxiety dream, but you can't just tell him that. He's not paying you for a pat on the back and a there. He needs an interpretation, a divine message decoded. You consult an imaginary scroll in your mind, a composite of all the dream books you've studied. To see a field of ripe barley, you begin slowly, is generally good. It signifies abundance, the fruit of one's labor. Beck nods, a flicker of hope in his eyes. but for it to turn to dust. You pause, letting the silence hang for a moment. Dust can signify insignificance, or things that are fleeting. And a wind from the west. The west is the land of the dead, the realm of Osiris. Beck pales. The dead? Does this mean Nacht himself will... Not so hasty, Beck, you interject smoothly. The symbols are complex, their meanings layered like the skins of an onion. It is not always literal. Perhaps it signifies that an old way of doing things on the estate is coming to an end, that old practices will be blown away, proving fruitless. Perhaps there is a need for a new approach to the land, or a neglected duty to the ancestors who watch over it. This is a safer, more actionable interpretation. It shifts the focus from unavoidable doom to something that can be addressed. This is a key part of the job, not just predicting, but guiding. Mainstream historical understanding tells us that dreams were indeed considered direct messages. Your role isn't just to translate, but to provide a course of action, often involving prayers, offerings, or specific rituals to appease the gods or avert ill fortune. You continue. The spirits of the West may be reminding you of dues unpaid or rituals forgotten. Have all offerings been made at the family shrine? Has the proper respect been paid to the local deities of the fields? Beck considers this. There was a small shrine to Renanutet, the harvest goddess, that was damaged in the last storm. We have been meaning to repair it. Then perhaps the dream is a call to honor Renanutet, to restore her sacred place, ensuring her benevolence towards the coming harvest. You conclude, the dust could be the consequence of this neglect, and the wind from the west, a reminder that the spirits are watching. Attend to this, and the vision may prove to be a timely warning, not a dire prophecy. You add a small practical detail, and perhaps, Beck, ensure your field boundaries are well marked this season. Sometimes a wind from the west is just a euphemism for a greedy neighbor trying to subtly shift his fence line when no one is looking. One must be practical too, eh? Beck manages a weak smile at your little joke. He seems relieved. He leaves a small payment, a few jars of beer, a loaf of particularly good bread, and a promise to see to the shrine immediately. You make a note on your papyrus. Beck, barley to dust, Renanutet shrine, advise repair and offerings, possible boundary dispute. It's amazing how often divine messages align with very earthly common sense. Your next client is the young weaver, Tis. She is nervous, her hands twisting the fringe of her shawl. Her dream is a recurring one. She is weaving a magnificent tapestry, the colors vibrant, the pattern intricate. But each night, as she nears completion, a small, unseen creature unravels her work from the bottom, and she wakes just as the whole thing is about to fall apart. This is a classic anxiety motif, of course, the fear of one's efforts being undone, of failure at the brink of success. But you can't simply say, oh, you're just stressed about your new job. That wouldn't fly in 1300 BCE. You think of the goddess Tiet, patroness of weavers. To weave is a sacred art, Tai. You begin, your voice gentle. It is to bring order from chaos, beauty from tangled threads, much like my own work in a way. She nods, her eyes wide. For your work to be unraveled by an unseen force, this is a potent symbol. Some ancient texts suggest that to dream of unraveling can mean a secret is about to be revealed, or that a hidden enemy is at work. This is where you might introduce a slightly more unusual detail. There are also older interpretations from the papyri of the learned Kurdi, which speak of such dreams in relation to household spirits. Sometimes, a mischievous jinni or a restless ancestral spirit, feeling neglected, might interfere in the small occupations of the living. This is a slightly more esoteric, perhaps less common belief, but plausible within the vast spiritual landscape of ancient Egypt. Does your loom face the doorway in your new dwelling? You ask. Why, yes, it does, she replies, surprised. It is said that spirits often enter and leave through doorways. Perhaps your diligent work, so near the threshold, is inadvertently disturbed. Try moving your loom to a more secluded corner, and make a small offering of bread and beer each evening, dedicating it to the guardians of your home. Ask for their protection over your craft. T seems to consider this. It's practical advice, wrapped in a spiritual explanation. Do you think it will work? She asks, a hopeful tremor in her voice. The gods favor those who show respect and diligence, you say, a non-committal but reassuring statement. And a change of scenery never hurt a difficult piece of weaving. You even manage a small, empathetic smile. Besides, fewer drafts in the corner might actually help keep your threads from tangling divine intervention, or not. She laughs a little nervously, but the tension in her shoulders seems to ease. She leaves a small string of faience beads as payment, her eyes brighter than when she arrived. It's these small victories, these moments of easing another's burden, that make the endless parade of anxieties worthwhile, even if half the time you suspect you're just an overqualified ancient therapist with a good line in symbolic interpretation. The sun is higher now, beating down on the dusty lanes of Thebes. The sounds of the city are in full swing, merchants hawking their wares, children shouting in play, the distant chanting from a temple procession. You take a moment to sip some water, stretching your back. Interpreting dreams is strangely quite tiring. It's not just listening, it's a focused empathy, a sifting of symbols, a careful navigation of your client's fears and hopes, all while trying to stay on the right side of the gods, and perhaps more importantly, public opinion. A few too many failed interpretations, and your reputation would be in tatters, your courtyard empty. You think about the dream books again. Some are incredibly specific. If a man sees himself in a dream eating crocodile flesh, good, it means he will become an official. Why a crocodile? Why an official? Who first made that connection, and did it actually work out for them? Then there are the more ominous ones. If a man sees his face in a mirror, bad, it means another wife. That one probably caused a few domestic disputes, you imagine. You chuckle to yourself. It's almost like the ancient Egyptian version of a gossip magazine's horoscope, only with much higher stakes. One particularly peculiar entry you recall from a tattered scroll concerned seeing a dwarf dancing. If a man sees a dwarf dancing in his dream, good, it means his heart will be happy. Dwarfs held a complex place in Egyptian society, often associated with the god Bez, a protector of households, childbirth, and sexuality. They were also entertainers. So a dancing dwarf might indeed be a good omen. It's one of those details that seems specific and yet benign, a little pocket of unexpected cheer in the often fraught landscape of dream interpretation. The midday heat is building. Most sensible folk are seeking shade. You might have a short break, perhaps a small meal, before the afternoon's clients arrive. Maybe a scribe with a perplexing dream about a baboon misfiling his papyri, a clear sign he needs to reorganize his office, obviously, or a soldier dreaming of a broken chariot before a campaign. Each one a little puzzle, a little window into the hopes and fears that have probably been much the same since humans first started dreaming. Your job is to bring a little order, a little understanding, and hopefully a little peace, one dream at a time, and to make sure you get paid enough in bread and beer to keep your own household running. After all, a dream interpreter with an empty stomach is probably not going to give the most optimistic readings. You glance towards the temple of Amun, its massive pylons shimmering in the heat haze. The priests there, they have their grand rituals, their direct lines to the state gods. Your work is quieter, more personal, dealing with the everyday anxieties of ordinary people. And yet, in a society that placed such profound importance on the unseen world, your role is a vital thread in the fabric of life. You are a navigator of the Duat, the underworld, that place everyone visits each night in their sleep, even if you only do it from the relative comfort of your dusty courtyard. You are the bridge between the sleeping mind and the waking world, trying to make sense of the echoes from beyond. And as the scent of Merritt's midday stew begins to drift into the courtyard, you think, perhaps it's not such a bad grind after all. At least it's never, ever boring. Well, mostly never, except for the endless teeth-falling-out dreams. Those are definitely boring. The midday meal is simple but sustaining. A hearty lentil stew, thick with vegetables Merritt bartered for at the local market, and more of that ubiquitous flatbread, perfect for scooping. You eat slowly, seated on a mat in the coolest part of your small house, the air still carrying the faint, sweet scent of the morning's incense you burned, a small offering to Bess, the dwarf god, protector of households. He's a popular deity, his grotesque, leonine features meant to ward off evil, and frankly, you appreciate any help you can get, divine or otherwise. Merritt chats about neighborhood news, whose donkey has wandered off again, which merchant is rumored to have received a new shipment of cedar wood from Byblos. It's a comfortable domestic interlude, a necessary anchor to the often strange and unsettling worlds you navigate in your professional life. You sometimes wonder if Merritt ever dreams of your client's anxieties, or if she has a special mental amulet that keeps them at bay. She's remarkably good at leaving your work at the courtyard threshold, a skill you envy on particularly challenging days. As the sun begins its slow descent from its zenith, casting longer, sharper shadows, your afternoon clients begin to arrive. The first is a woman named Nabet, the wife of a moderately successful trader who deals in faience amulets and scarabs, a good business as protective talismans are always in demand. Nabet is dressed in finer linen than tea, her dark hair intricately braided and adorned with small carnelian beads. Her concerns, you suspect, will be less about basic survival and more about status or prosperity. She carries an air of polite impatience, as if her time is more valuable than most. You offer her the client's mat, and she settles with a delicate rustle of her garments. "Sal," she begins, her voice melodious but firm, "I have been troubled by a most perplexing vision. I dreamt I was at a grand festival, perhaps even one in the presence of the Pharaoh himself, life be praised. I was wearing a magnificent pectoral of gold and lapis lazuli, the envy of all. But as I went to present an offering, the pectoral crumbled in my hands, turning into common river clay. She looks at you expectantly, her perfectly shaped eyebrows raised. Gold and lapis, symbols of wealth and divinity and enduring power. Clay, the stuff of common pottery, of the earth, of mortality. A powerful dream, noble Nebbit, so you say, steepling your fingers. To dream of such fine adornments signifies favor and high standing. But for it to crumble to clay, this suggests a fear of loss, perhaps, or a warning that true value may not lie where it seems. This is where you might draw on the mainstream understanding that dreams could be cautionary. They weren't just fortune-telling, they were often seen as divine advice or warnings. You continue, the gods sometimes remind us that worldly splendor is transient. Could it be that your heart is overly attached to material possessions, or that you fear your current social standing is not as secure as it appears? Nebbit frowns slightly. This isn't quite the straightforward, you will receive riches, or your rival will stumble, she might have hoped for. Alternatively, you add, sensing her mild displeasure, it could be a test. Perhaps the gods are assessing your reaction to such a loss. Would you despair, or would you recognize that your true worth, your ka, is not diminished by the loss of external finery? She considers this. My husband has been ambitious of late, she confides, her voice a little lower. He speaks of expanding his ventures, of taking greater risks. Perhaps the dream is a warning against overreach. That is a wise consideration, you affirm. Clay is also the foundation of our homes, the earth from which life springs. Perhaps the dream urges a return to more solid, foundational values, rather than chasing glittering but potentially fragile ventures. It could be advising prudence and a focus on what is real and lasting. You make a mental note, Nebbit, gold to clay, fear of status loss, husband's ambition, advise caution and focus on true value. You even add a little flourish for her. Remember, Nebbit, even the sacred scarab beetle pushes a ball of simple dung from which new life emerges. True wealth often has humble beginnings. She seems more satisfied with this, as it offers a path that still allows for ambition, but tempered with wisdom. She leaves a generous payment, a small, intricately painted pot that might have held expensive kohl eyeliner. You suspect it's one of her husband's slightly imperfect trade goods, but it's still a fine piece. The next visitor is a young soldier, Amos, lean and sun-darkened, his eyes still holding the alertness of one who has seen distant lands. He's home on leave from a campaign in Nubia. His dream is vivid and direct. I dreamt I was in my boat on the Great Green, he says, referring to the Mediterranean Sea, though his campaign was south, on the Nile. A great storm arose, and though I rowed with all my might, my oar snapped in two. I was adrift. An oar snapping, a clear symbol of loss of control, of powerlessness. To be on the Great Green can signify a great undertaking or a journey into the unknown, you explain. A storm, naturally, represents turmoil, opposition. For your oar to break, this is a potent sign of a challenge to your strength or your resources. Are you facing a decision where you feel your efforts are insufficient or where your usual methods are failing you? Amos nods slowly. There is a difficult choice I must make regarding my future in the army. My commander offers advancement, but it would take me further from home into more dangerous territory. My family wishes me to stay, to take up a trade here in Thebes. The broken oar, you say, might represent this division in your path, this feeling that your will is thwarted, or that you lack the means to steer your own course effectively. It could be a call to find a new way to navigate, or perhaps to acknowledge that some currents are too strong to fight directly. Mainstream historical fact: military service was a path to social advancement for some, but it came with obvious risks and long absences from home. Such dilemmas would have been common. You then introduce a slightly more specific, perhaps regional belief. In some traditions of the Delta boatman, a broken oar in a dream also means you must make an offering to Hapi, the god of the Nile, for guidance and smooth passage, even if your dream was of the Great Green. It signifies a need to propitiate the very spirit of the waters that sustain us and carry us on our journeys. This offers a concrete ritual, something tangible he can do. Perhaps making such an offering and meditating on your choices by the riverbank will bring clarity. You add trying to inject a little lightness, and if you do decide to stay a soldier, maybe invest in a slightly thicker oar next time, eh? Or better yet, get someone else to do the rowing. Officers get all the perks. Imose cracks a smile. He leaves a small, foreign-looking carved wooden bird, a trinket from his travels. Throughout the afternoon, you dip your reed pen into the shallow well of your ink palette. The black ink is made from soot, often from cooking fires, mixed with gum arabic, a resin from the acacia tree, and a little water. The red ink, used for headings, emphasis, or in your case the interpretation itself, typically comes from ochre, a natural clay earth pigment. These materials are humble, yet they are the building blocks of records that last millennia. You sometimes feel like a very minor scribe in the great library of human experience, noting down the nightly dispatches from the collective unconscious. You recall a scholarly debate you once overheard between two temple scribes arguing about the precise meaning of dreaming of a baboon. One insisted it always represented Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, and thus signified intellectual pursuits or messages. The other argued quite heatedly for a scribe that depending on the baboon's actions, it could also represent chaos or trickery, as baboons were known for their occasionally disruptive behavior. Historians still debate the fluidity of dream symbols, how much was fixed by tradition, as in formal dream books like the one supposedly found at the feet of a statue of Thoth, and how much was open to the interpreter's intuition or adaptation to the individual dreamer's context. You tend to lean towards a bit of both. The books provide a foundation, a common language, but the true art lies in weaving those meanings together with the dreamer's life and anxieties. As the afternoon wears on, a merchant frets about a dream of his scales being unbalanced. Fairly straightforward, that one. Perhaps you should double-check your weights, my friend, or your conscience. And a young mother dreams of her baby speaking in perfect and adult sentences, a sign of precocious wisdom, or perhaps just wishful thinking for a full night's sleep. Each consultation is a miniature drama, a quiet unburdening. You remember a particularly weird detail from one of your uncle's more obscure papyri. If a woman dreams she is brewing beer and the beer overflows and puts out the fire, it means her husband's anger will be quenched by her industry. It's so specific, so domestic, yet imbued with this almost magical quality. You haven't had occasion to use that one yet, but it's filed away, It makes you think about how to induce good dreams. Some people whisper protective spells before sleep, or place an amulet of the Eye of Horus, the Ujat eye, beneath their headrest. The Ujat was a powerful symbol of protection, royal power, and good health. Others might burn specific incenses, like Kai-Fi, a complex blend of 16 ingredients, believing its fragrant smoke would carry their prayers for peaceful sleep to the gods. It's not so different, perhaps, from people today using lavender spray on their pillows or listening to calming music. The methods change, but the desire for a peaceful night, free from troubling visions, is timeless. The final client of the day is a nervous-looking baker named Pawa. He's clutching a small, slightly misshapen loaf of bread as an offering. "Sao," he stammers, "I had a most unsettling dream. I dreamt I was baking bread, as I do every day. But when I pulled the loaves from the oven, they were not bread, but live snakes, hissing and coiling." Snakes, always a tricky symbol. Snakes could represent chaos and danger, being associated with Apep, the great serpent of darkness who threatened Ra's daily journey. But they could also symbolize rebirth, transformation, and even healing, as with the goddess Wadjet, the cobra deity of Lower Egypt and a protector of kings. "Snakes are powerful, Pawa," you begin, your voice steady. "They can signify many things, both positive and negative. Tell me, in your dream, did these snakes threaten you?" Pawa thinks for a moment. "No," he says slowly. "They were active, alive, but they did not try to bite me. They just were." This is important, you say. If they were not aggressive, then perhaps they do not represent a direct threat, but rather a potent change or an unexpected energy. Bread is sustenance, your livelihood. For it to transform into something so vital, so alive, could signify a coming transformation in your work. Perhaps a new opportunity, something unexpected that will require you to adapt, to shed an old skin like a serpent. You then consider another angle, something tapping into the blur between magic and daily life that permeated ancient Egyptian thought. Historians and priests sometimes discuss the concept of Heka, or magic, as a force that infuses the world. Some believe that potent dreams, especially those involving transformative symbols like snakes, can be a sign that the dreamer is brushing against this potent, creative, or destructive force. This frames the dream not just as a message, but as an experience of something fundamental. Could it be that your baking is about to take on a new potency? Perhaps a new recipe, a new method will bring unexpected success? Pawa looks a little bewildered, but also intrigued. "I have been experimenting with adding a little more honey to one of my doughs." "There you go," you exclaim gently. "Perhaps the snakes represent this new, lively ingredient. This is secret energy you are putting into your craft. Embrace this change, Pawa. Do not fear the unexpected life in your work. It may bring you surprising rewards." You decide to add a bit of ancient Egyptian health and safety advice with a wink. Just, maybe double check the oven for actual snakes before you start baking each morning. Can't be too careful when dreams are this vivid, right? Pawa laughs, the tension visibly leaving him. He hands over the loaf, which smells delicious, despite its slightly lopsided appearance. As Pawa departs, the sun is kissing the western horizon, flooding the sky with hues of orange, pink, and gold. The sounds of Thebes are mellowing, the calls of vendors replaced by the softer sounds of families gathering for their evening meals. Your workday is done. You carefully roll up your papyrus notes, clean your pens, and put away your palette. Merritt is lighting the oil lamps inside, their flickering glow a welcome sight. You feel that familiar end-of-day weariness, not just physical, but mental. Carrying the weight of so many hopes and fears, even for a few hours, is draining. Yet there's also a quiet satisfaction. You've helped people navigate their inner landscapes, offered them frameworks for understanding their anxieties, and perhaps, just perhaps, nudged them towards more positive actions or perspectives. Whether the gods truly spoke through these dreams, or whether it was all the complex workings of the human mind, your role as an interpreter, a guide, felt meaningful. Later, as you lie on your own sleeping mat, the desert air cooling through the window, you can't help but wonder what dreams you will have tonight. Does a dream interpreter dream of interpreting his own dreams? It feels like a riddle Thoth himself might pose. Or perhaps, after a long day of untangling the nocturnal knots of others, your own mind will simply offer you the blessed emptiness of a deep, dreamless sleep. One can only hope. The remnants of the evening meal have been cleared away. Merritt is already asleep on her mat, her breathing soft and even in the stillness of your small home. The oil lamp sputters, casting dancing shadows on the mud brick walls, shadows that sometimes, in your more fanciful moments, seem to mimic the very phantoms you wrestle with by day. You sit for a moment longer, not quite ready for sleep yourself. It's a habit you've developed, a quiet pause between the world of waking concerns and the unpredictable landscape of your own nightly visions. Do you have special rituals? Not elaborate ones. Some interpreters, particularly those with priestly affiliations, might engage in complex purifications or recite lengthy hymns to Thoth, or perhaps even Imhotep, the deified architect and physician, a patron of wisdom. You, however, prefer a simpler approach, a quiet moment of gratitude to whatever powers may be listening, for the day's sustenance, for Merritt's steady presence, for the small ability you have to bring a measure of comfort to others. Sometimes you murmur a short traditional charm against nightmares, something your uncle taught you, more out of habit than deep conviction. After all, if anyone should be able to handle a bad dream, it's you, right? The irony isn't lost on you. It's like a physician catching a common cold, slightly embarrassing. You finally lie down on your own ready mat, the woven fibers cool against your skin. The night air drifting through the small high window carries the distant sounds of Thebes settling down. A dog barks somewhere in the labyrinthine alleys, quickly silenced. The faint, rhythmic clang of a night watchman's staff against the cobblestones, a reassuring sound. From further afield, near the river, you can sometimes hear the braying of a donkey or the lowing of cattle, restless in their pens. These are the mundane lullabies of your city. Drifting off is a slow process tonight. Your mind, still buzzing from the day's interpretations, replays fragments of conversations, images from your client's dreams. Beck's barley turning to dust, Nebbit's crumbling pectoral, Amos's snapped oar, Pawa's bread snakes. It's like a psychic residue that clings to you. Do you dream of their dreams? Sometimes. More often, your own dreams are a chaotic jumble, perhaps your subconscious mind's way of processing the overflow. You might dream of endlessly trying to decipher a papyrus written in a language you don't understand, or of giving advice to a very skeptical looking baboon who then critiques your technique. The life of a dream interpreter isn't without its occupational hazards, even in sleep. Tonight, as you hover in that space between wakefulness and true slumber, a more coherent image begins to form. You are walking in a vast, dark hall, its pillars reaching up into an unseen gloom. You know, with the certainty that only dreams can provide, that this is a chamber within the duat, the underworld. Before you sits a figure shrouded in linen, like a mummy, yet its eyes glow with a faint, internal light. It is Osiris, Lord of the Dead, though his features are indistinct, more a presence than a clearly defined form. He doesn't speak, but you feel a question emanating from him. Is your heart lighter than the feather of Maat? This, of course, is the ultimate question every Egyptian soul would face at their final judgment, their heart weighed against the feather of truth, order, and cosmic balance. To have a heart heavy with misdeeds meant oblivion, to be devoured by the monstrous Ammit. To have a light heart, one unburdened by sin, meant passage into the afterlife, the field of reeds. It's a core tenet of your entire belief system, a fact as solid as the pyramids themselves. You've advised countless clients on how to live in accordance with Ma'at, how to ensure their actions keep their hearts light. Yet here you are, facing the question yourself, even in a dream. What weighs on your own heart? The interpretations you weren't sure about? The times you offered comforts that was perhaps more pragmatic than divinely inspired? The small payment you accepted from a widow that in retrospect felt like too much? The dream shifts, the Hall of Osiris dissolves, and you are standing by the Nile at dawn. The water is calm, reflecting the pearly sky. A single blue lotus flower floats near the bank, its petals slowly unfurling. It's a symbol of creation, of rebirth. You feel a sense of peace wash over you. Perhaps your heart isn't so heavy after all. Or perhaps this is just your dreaming mind's way of reassuring itself after a long day of shouldering others' burdens. You stir, briefly surfacing towards wakefulness. The night is still dark. You ponder the source of these nightly narratives. Are they truly whispers from the gods, messages from departed ancestors seeking to guide or warn their living kin? The belief in the Ak, the effective spirit of the deceased, and their continued interaction with the world of the living is deeply ingrained. Many dreams were attributed to such ancestral visitations. Or are dreams simply the mind's way of sifting through the day's experiences, its fears, its hopes, like a scribe sorting through a pile of jumbled papyri? Historians and philosophers, even in your own time, likely held differing views, though the prevailing culture leaned heavily towards divine or supernatural origins. The idea of a false dream, one not sent by a god, but arising from more mundane sources, also existed, complicating your job considerably. How did one distinguish a true divine message from, say, the ramblings of an overfull stomach? That was the million-Deben question. You yourself believe it's a bit of everything, a divine spark, a human echo, a ripple from the vast, unseen ocean of consciousness. Your job is to listen to the echo and try to trace it back to its source, or at least offer a plausible map. You recall a particularly odd ritual whispered about for dispelling truly terrifying nightmares, those believed to be sent by minor malevolent entities or angry ghosts. It involved waking before dawn, going to a crossroads and loudly proclaiming the dream to the four winds, then spitting 3 times to the west, the direction of the land of the dead, effectively banishing the evil influence. You've never prescribed it. It feels a bit theatrical for your taste, and probably not great for neighborhood relations if everyone started shouting their nightmares at crossroads. Still, it's a fascinating detail, a testament to how seriously these nocturnal visions were taken and the lengths people would go to neutralize their perceived power. It makes your gentle advice about moving a loom or repairing a shrine seem positively tame. What about the psychological aspect? Some modern thinkers, were they here, might suggest you were an early form of therapist, helping people articulate their anxieties and find meaning in their internal struggles. Were the ancient Egyptians practicing a form of psychoanalysis without naming it as such? Scholars still debate the psychological sophistication embedded within these ancient interpretive frameworks. Were the symbols fixed and universal, or did interpreters intuitively adapt them to the individual's life, much like you did with Beck, connecting his dusty barley to a neglected shrine, a tangible issue he could address? You suspect the best interpreters, then as now used a healthy dose of what you might call applied empathy. You weren't just a walking dictionary of symbols, you were a reader of people. A subtle frown, a hesitant tone, a flicker in the eyes. These often told you as much as the dream itself. The ethical considerations sometimes weigh on you. The power of suggestion is strong. If you interpret a dream as a dire omen, you could plunge someone into despair. If you offer false hope, you could lead them astray. You try always to steer towards constructive paths, interpretations that empower rather than frighten, that encourage reflection and right action according to Ma'at. It's a delicate balance, this dance between fate and free will, between divine message and human responsibility. And it's a balance you must find without the benefit of peer reviews or professional oversight committees. Just you, your inherited scrolls, your intuition, and the expectant faces of your clients. No pressure, right? You almost snort a laugh into your sleeping mat. The idea of a Dream Interpreters Guild monthly review discussing difficult cases and best practices is absurdly anachronistic, yet somehow appealing. As true dawn approaches, the deep indigo of the night sky begins to soften at the eastern horizon. The first birds are starting to chirp, tentative notes in the growing light. Your own night's dreams, whether from Osiris or just your tired brain, are already fading, leaving only faint traces like footprints on wet sand. You feel a sense of quiet renewal. Another day will soon begin. More dreams will be dreamt, more anxieties will surface, and you will be there in your shaded courtyard, ready to listen, to ponder, to interpret. To help in your small way, the people of Thebes make sense of the mysterious, sometimes terrifying, always fascinating world of their sleep. It's a strange calling, perhaps, this life spent sifting through the ephemeral narratives of the night. But as you lie there, feeling the gentle warmth of the rising sun begin to touch the land, you wouldn't trade it. It is, after all, a life filled with endless stories. And now, as our time together in ancient Thebes draws to a close, let your own mind begin to drift. Let the images of sun-baked earth, flowing river, and intricate hieroglyphs gently fade. The concerns of that ancient world can rest now, just as our dream interpreter finds his own brief peace before a new day. The air around you is calm, still. Feel the gentle weight of your own blankets, the softness of your pillow. Listen to the quiet sounds of your own space, the gentle hum of the night or the early morning, wherever you are. Allow your breathing to slow, to deepen. Each breath in, a wave of calm. Each breath out, a release of any lingering tension. Your body is heavy, relaxed, sinking comfortably into your bed. Your mind is quiet, letting go of thoughts, letting go of worries. There is nothing you need to do right now, nowhere you need to be, except here, resting peacefully. The stories have been told. The day is done, or a new one is quietly waiting. Sleep is a gentle friend, ready to welcome you, drifting, floating, peacefully. Hey everyone, tonight we're strapping ourselves in for a rather electrifying journey back to the late 19th century. Imagine this. You're not idly scrolling through wellness influencers on your phone, each promising a new biohack involving infrared light or adaptogenic mushrooms to cure your modern malaise. No, tonight, your hope for alleviating that nagging backache, that persistent fatigue, or that rather embarrassing case of, well, personal sluggishness, rests on a curious contraption of metal discs, wires, and moistened flannel, all powered by the miracle force of the age, electricity. We're talking about the electric belt. It's a far cry from your discreet little TENS unit or that fancy percussive massage gun. Frankly, considering the complete lack of regulation, the often outlandish claims, and the sheer fashion statement some of these belts made under your waistcoat, you probably wouldn't survive the era's wellness fads with your dignity or your bank account entirely intact. One wrong move, and you might just accidentally invigorate the cat. So before you get cozy, take a quick sec to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It really does send a pleasant little current through the channel's circuits. And as you settle in, I'd love for you to share where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always fascinating to see how these historical curiosities resonate across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe get that fan going for some gentle white noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. The gaslight on your bedside table casts a flickering amber glow across the pages of the Illustrated London News, or maybe it's Harper's Weekly if you're across the pond. It's the latter part of the 1800s, a time of astonishing progress, of steam trains thundering across continents, of telegraph wires humming with messages, and of incandescent bulbs beginning to banish the night in bustling city centers. Electricity is the marvel of the age, a mysterious, potent force that seems to promise limitless possibilities. And if it can power factories and illuminate entire cities, surely, you muse, it can do something for this persistent ache in your lower back that makes getting out of your new horsehair stuffed armchair a 10-minute strategic operation. You've been feeling off, not desperately ill, not in a way that would have you calling for Dr. Armitage with his bag full of calomel and intimidatingly large syringes. No, it's more a general malaise, a want of tone, as the advertisements so delicately put it. Perhaps it's what they're calling neurasthenia, that fashionable affliction of the nervous modern man, supposedly brought on by the frantic pace of this new industrial age. Or maybe it's just the damp weather and too many rich, multi-course dinners. Whatever its name, it leaves you feeling tired, a bit dim, like a gas lamp running low on fuel. You've tried the usual remedies, Dr. Willoughby's celebrated liver pills, which seem to celebrate mainly the speed at which they could evacuate your system. A rather bracing tonic composed mostly of iron filings and something that tasted suspiciously like sherry, prescribed by a well-meaning aunt. You even briefly considered a course of hydrotherapy at that new spa, involving being hosed down with freezing water, but the very thought made your joints ache in protest. Nothing has quite managed to restore your vital spark. Then, your eyes fall upon an advertisement tucked between a notice for Piers' soap and a serialized Dickens novel. It's bold, confident, almost vibrating with promise. Are you weak? Do you suffer? Is your vital force depleted? It bellows in capital letters. Well, yes, yes, and decidedly yes. The advertisement is for Professor Maxwell's patent electrogalvanic invigorating belt. Beneath the headline, an engraving shows a distinguished-looking gentleman with a magnificent beard standing ramrod straight, a subtle, almost beatific smile on his face. He is presumably wearing the belt, though thankfully it's not visible. The text goes on to list the ailments it can cure: nervous debility, lumbago, sciatica, indigestion, liver complaints, weak kidneys, loss of memory, defective circulation, gout, rheumatism, impotence, and general lassitude. It's quite the list. It seems Professor Maxwell's belt doesn't just cure aches and pains. It practically promises to turn you into a pillar of society, brimming with vigor and probably able to recite Shakespeare backwards. This broad spectrum of claims was a hallmark of such devices. Why specialize when you can claim to be a panacea? Electricity was, indeed, being explored by legitimate medical science during this period for conditions like paralysis or certain types of pain. This forms a crucial mainstream historical fact. Medical galvanism and Faradization, applying electrical currents to the body, were subjects of serious study. Pioneering figures like Guillaume Duchenne de Boulogne used electricity to map muscle functions. However, this legitimate research quickly spun off into a vast commercial market where scientific principles were often generously interpreted, shall we say. Professor Maxwell's advertisement explains, with a great deal of scientific-sounding jargon that you only half understand, that his belt generates a mild, continuous current of nature's own nerve force, which circulates throughout the body, toning the nerves, stimulating sluggish organs, and restoring the vital balance. It mentions hydroelectric action through specially designed zinc and copper plates that react with the natural moisture of the body. No shocks, it assures you, just a gentle, warming, life-giving current. It sounds rather pleasant, actually, like being gently recharged. You imagine tiny, benevolent lightning bolts zipping through your system, chasing away the blues and the backaches. You've seen other such advertisements, of course. Dr. Scott's electric corset for the ladies, promising an improved figure and a cure for hysteria. Electric hairbrushes to combat baldness, because why not? There are even electric rings and insoles. It seems you can't swing a cat in a chemist's shop without hitting some newfangled electrical cure-all. This proliferation of electrical bodywear is a fascinating and slightly weird detail of the era. It's as if society collectively decided that the best way to deal with any problem was to strap a battery to it. You fold the newspaper, the advertisement for Professor Maxwell's belt, burning a hopeful little hole in your thoughts. The price is considerable, several guineas, enough to buy a new suit of clothes or a decent set of books. But then, what price good health? What price escaping this miasma of fatigue and discomfort? You could send away for it, via mail order, the advertisement assures, discreetly packaged, of course. Later that week, you find yourself in a bustling part of the city, perhaps Cheapside in London, or Broadway in New York. Amidst the emporiums selling everything from pianos to pickles, you spot a small, rather clinical-looking shop with a sign, the Electrotherapeutic Appliance Company. Curiosity and a particularly sharp twinge from your lower back as you step off the curb propels you inside. The interior is lined with glass cabinets displaying an astonishing array of gleaming metallic devices. Belts, yes, but also electric plasters, galvanic chains, and complicated-looking machines with hand cranks and brass electrodes. A man in a crisp white coat who introduces himself as Mr. Faraday, a conveniently auspicious name, you think, though likely no relation to the great Michael, approaches you with an air of quiet confidence. "May I be of assistance, sir?" he asks, his voice smooth and reassuring. "Are you perhaps seeking relief from one of the many ailments that modern electrical science can now so effectively address?" You describe your symptoms, feeling slightly self-conscious, as if admitting to a personal failing. Mr. Faraday nods sympathetically. "Ah, a classic presentation of depleted nerve force. Very common in these demanding times, sir, but fortunately very treatable." He gestures towards a prominent display of belts, similar in appearance to Professor Maxwell's advertised model. "Our very own Heidelberg electric belt, sir. German-designed, naturally. The Germans are so very advanced in these matters of electrical science, you know. You didn't know, but it sounds impressive. This model incorporates the latest discoveries in electrophysiology, pure copper and zinc elements, specially configured to ensure a constant, gentle current. It stimulates the great sympathetic nervous system, you see, restoring harmony and vigor." He picks one up. It's surprisingly hefty, a series of metal discs sewn onto a wide band of what looks like red flannel, with adjustable straps and buckles. You simply moisten the inner lining with a little water, or for a more potent effect, a weak solution of vinegar and water. Strap it on, and let nature's own restorer do its work. Vinegar and water? That sounds less like nature's own restorer and more like you're about to pickle yourself from the inside out. You can already imagine the faint, tangy aroma clinging to your undergarments. A gentle tingling or warmth is often felt, a sign that the vital current is at work. Mr. Faraday continues, oblivious to your olfactory concerns. Many gentlemen report feeling a distinct improvement within days, sometimes hours. Hours? That sounds almost too good to be true. And are there any side effects, you venture? Mr. Faraday chuckles, a polite clinical sound. Only the side effect of renewed health and energy, sir. It is perfectly safe, unlike those rather harsh chemical remedies or purgatives so often prescribed. This is gentle, natural, working in harmony with your own bodily electricity. He says bodily electricity with such conviction you almost believe you have tiny power stations in your elbows. Some people wear it day and night for stubborn cases, others just for a few hours a day or during periods of particular exertion. You ask about the science, trying to sound knowledgeable. Mr. Faraday launches into another explanation involving galvanic action, nerve fluid, and positive and negative poles, most of which goes slightly over your head but sounds undeniably scientific. He even shows you a diagram of the human nervous system with little arrows indicating how the belt's current will flow, like a miniature electrical map of your insides. It's all very convincing, in a slightly bewildering way. It brings to mind one of the ongoing scholarly debates among medical historians today. To what extent did the purveyors and purchasers of these devices genuinely believe in the elaborate pseudoscientific explanations offered versus simply banking on the placebo effect or the public's general awe of electricity? Were they cynical hucksters, true believers, or something in between? Mr. Faraday, with his earnest expression and pristine white coat, certainly seems like a true believer, or perhaps he's just a very good salesman. You consider the Heidelberg electric belt. It looks sturdy, well made even. The red flannel is rather jaunty, and the thought of that gentle, warming, life-giving current is undeniably appealing. Your back gives another admonitory throb, as if urging you on. The price is similar to Professor Maxwell's mail-order version, but here you can see it, hold it. Mr. Faraday even offers to let you try one on in a private booth, though you decline for now. The thought of disrobing in this temple of electrical marvels to strap on a damp, metallic contraption feels a step too far for a first visit. Many of our most prominent citizens are patrons, sir, Mr. Faraday adds, as if sensing your hesitation. Statesmen, clergymen, men of letters, all have benefited from the restorative powers of the Heidelberg belt. He doesn't name names, of course, professional discretion, but the implication is clear. You'd be in good company. If it's good enough for statesmen, surely it's good enough for your tired back. You begin to think, what if it does work? What if this is the answer you've been searching for, the key to unlocking that lost vigor? It's the age of miracles, after all, the age of electricity. Perhaps this curious, flannel-backed band of metal is your own personal miracle, waiting to be embraced. The alternative is another consultation with Dr. Armitage, and frankly, the electric belt is starting to look like the far more appealing option. At least it doesn't involve mysterious pills or icy water. Just a little bit of nature's own nerve force, and perhaps a faint smell of pickles. The decision is made. Whether it's the persuasive charm of Mr. Faraday, the nagging persistence of your lumbago, or simply the seductive allure of participating in the great electrical revolution, you find yourself parting with a significant sum of money. The Heidelberg electric belt is yours. Mr. Faraday carefully boxes it, along with a small, neatly printed instruction booklet filled with testimonials and further explanations of its electrotherapeutic action. The packaging is, as promised, rather discreet, a plain cardboard box tied with simple string. No miracle electric cure inside, emblazoned on the lid, thankfully. You feel a small thrill, a mixture of hope and a tiny voice whispering, "You've just spent 3 guineas on some flannel and metal discs, you absolute ninny." Back in the relative privacy of your own rooms, you unbox your purchase with a certain sense of ceremony. The belt lies there, its red flannel backing a surprisingly cheerful contrast to the cool gleam of the zinc and copper plates. It smells faintly of new fabric and metal, not yet of vinegar. The instruction booklet is a masterpiece of optimistic prose. It reiterates the vast array of ailments the belt can address and includes glowing testimonials. Mrs. Post of Bath, after suffering for years with nervous headaches, reports complete relief after only 1 week. Mr. Q, a clergyman from Sussex, states his energy and oratorical powers have doubled since adopting the Heidelberg belt. You wonder if Mr. Q.'s sermons also became twice as long, and if his congregation considered that a positive development. The booklet explains that the metals work through galvanic action when moistened, creating a salutary flow of vital electricity. This reliance on a bit of moisture to kickstart the healing current is a common feature and a mainstream historical fact regarding these simple galvanic devices. The body's own sweat or added water, such as vinegar, would create a weak electrolyte solution, allowing a minimal current to flow between the dissimilar metals. The booklet also advises on the proper orientation. Ensure the positive pole, marked with a small p, is directed towards the afflicted organ for maximum efficacy. You peer at the discs. Sure enough, tiny, almost invisible letters are stamped onto them. It all feels very scientific, very precise, even if you're not entirely sure which of your organs are currently afflicted or what their preferred polarity might be. Now comes the moment of truth. Following the instructions, you fetch a small bowl of water and a dash of vinegar. You decide to go for the more potent effect from the start. Why temporize with miracles? You carefully dampen the flannel lining, trying not to get it too soggy. The metallic scent intensifies, now overlaid with the sharp tang of vinegar. It's a peculiar perfume, one you're fairly certain isn't going to become the next society fragrance. Ode to Heidelberg? Perhaps not. Then you strap it on. It's heavier than you expected, and the metal plates are cool against your skin, even through your undershirt and the damp flannel. You adjust the buckles, pulling it snug against your lower back, the supposed seat of your depleted nerve force. You stand there for a moment, expectantly. Do you feel it? Do you feel the gentle, warming, life-giving current? Well, maybe. There's a slight coolness, then perhaps a very faint, almost imperceptible tingling. Or is that just the damp flannel and your overactive imagination? It's certainly not a jolt. No sparks fly. Your hair doesn't stand on end. It's all very subtle, perhaps too subtle. The booklet does say the current is mild and continuous, not like those violent shocks administered by some of the more theatrical medical electricians with their intimidating static generators. This is supposed to be gentle, persuasive, coaxing your vital forces back into alignment. You suppose you'll have to trust the process. You're not expecting to suddenly levitate with sheer energy, but a small, noticeable improvement would be nice. You decide to wear it for the rest of the afternoon under your waistcoat. It's a bit bulky. You feel rather like you've padded yourself for a friendly bout of fisticuffs, or perhaps you're smuggling a very flat, metallic sandwich. Walking feels a little different, more structured around the midriff. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the hall mirror. Nothing seems overtly amiss from the outside, though you can't help but feel a certain self-consciousness. And there's that faint, vinegary aroma that you hope isn't too noticeable to passers-by. It's your little secret, this electrical embrace. You make a mental note to avoid anyone with a particularly keen sense of smell for the rest of the day. That nosy Mrs. Higgins from next door could probably sniff out a misplaced crumb from across the street. A vinegary waistcoat would be a topic of gossip for weeks. One rather weird detail you recall from your perusal of electrical gadgetry advertisements was for electric corsets that not only promised to improve the figure and cure internal ailments, but also claimed to impart a graceful and captivating carriage through electromagnetic influence on the muscular system. It makes you wonder if your belt, by association, might subtly improve your posture, making you stand taller, more invigorated looking, even if the current itself is doing precious little. The power of suggestion, after all, is a potent force. As the days turn into a week, wearing the Heidelberg electric belt becomes part of your routine. You moisten it each morning, strap it on, and go about your business. You try to be particularly attentive to any changes in your well-being. Is your backache truly easing? Are you feeling more energetic in the mornings, less reliant on that third cup of strong tea to get through the afternoon slump? It's hard to say definitively. Some days you think, yes, there's a definite improvement. You managed to prune the roses without your back seizing up. You even felt sprightly enough to engage in a rather vigorous political debate at your club. Clearly, the belt is working its wonders. Other days, however, the familiar fatigue creeps back in. The lumbago makes its presence felt with a familiar groan-inducing twinge, and you find yourself eyeing the belt with a degree of skepticism. Is it the belt, or is it simply the natural ebb and flow of your chronic discomforts? Or perhaps, as the instruction booklet helpfully suggests, for best results, maintain a cheerful disposition and avoid excesses of diet. You suspect that maintaining a cheerful disposition while constantly smelling faintly of vinegar might be a challenge in itself. That advice, you think with a wry internal smile, might be doing more therapeutic heavy lifting than the zinc and copper plates. You see other people out and about and find yourself wondering, are they wearing an electric belt? Is that why they look so smug, energetic, so upright? It's like being part of a secret, slightly metallic smelling club. This touches upon a scholarly debate. What was the social reach of these devices? While prominent advertisements in major newspapers suggest a middle and upper class target audience who could afford the guinea or two for a quality belt, historians also find evidence of cheaper, simpler galvanic devices, perhaps indicating that the allure of electrical cures permeated various social strata. Were there working class versions, perhaps less flannel and more rudimentary metal, peddled by street vendors? One evening, you're discreetly trying to adjust the belt. It has a tendency to ride up if you sit for too long, and you nearly send a teacup flying at a rather sedate gathering at your Aunt Agatha's. You manage to style it out as a sudden, unavoidable cough, but it's a close call. You can just imagine the ensuing conversation. Good heavens, what was that? Oh, just my electrogalvanic invigorator giving me a bit of a jolt. More tea? It's moments like these that make you question the practicality of your invisible cure. You start to feel a bit like a character in a penny dreadful, harboring a secret, slightly cumbersome, and odoriferous electrical device about your person. You reread the testimonials in the booklet, searching for reassurance. Baron von H. of Prussia declares he has not felt so vigorous since his university days. Miss L. of Liverpool long a sufferer from melancholia, now finds joy in everyday life, thanks to the Heidelberg. These stories are so compelling, and this reliance on testimonials is a key feature of 19th century medical advertising. In an era before stringent regulation or widespread scientific literacy regarding new technologies, personal accounts, however dubious or embellished, carried enormous weight. If it worked for the Baron, why not for you? You even mention, very casually, to your friend Weatherby, a fellow sufferer of modern ailments, that you've been experimenting with a new therapeutic apparatus. Weatherby, who has recently invested in a magnetic chest protector that makes him sound like he's wearing a knight's gorget under his shirt, is intrigued. Electrical, you say? Heard good things. Supposed to get the old humors flowing properly. My magnetic device is meant to realign the body's natural polarity. Bit noisy, though. Clanks a bit when I walk briskly. You exchange a look of men united by a common, slightly ridiculous hope for a simple cure. The Heidelberg belt itself is a fairly standard design for the time, but you've seen advertisements for even more elaborate contraptions. Some belts featured a small detachable battery pack for an enhanced current. Others incorporated medicated pads that were supposed to release healing balms when warmed by the body and the electrical action. There was the electric suspensory for gentlemen, promising to cure varicocele and allied weaknesses with targeted electrical support. It's a veritable wonderland of imaginative applications for a bit of weak galvanic current. One particularly memorable advertisement you saw was for an electric foot battery insole, which promised to draw out impurities from the entire system through the soles of the feet, all while providing a pleasant, warming glow. You imagine your feet glowing. It's an odd thought. So after a few weeks of diligent, vinegary application, what's the verdict on your Heidelberg electric belt? The truth is, it's ambiguous. Your back still aches, but perhaps a little less frequently. You still feel tired some afternoons, but maybe you're generally a bit more alert. It's so subjective. The human body is a fickle thing, and the power of belief is undeniably strong. Perhaps the ritual itself, the daily application, the focused attention on your well-being, is having some effect. Or perhaps the zinc and copper are indeed producing a mild, continuous current that is, in some subtle way, interacting with your bodily electricity. Or, and this thought keeps returning, perhaps you've just developed a higher tolerance for the smell of vinegar and the feeling of being gently hugged by a warm, metallic caterpillar. The jury, it seems, is still out, much like the gentle current the belt supposedly provides, present perhaps, but devilishly hard to pin down. Months have now drifted by, measured in the changing seasons outside your window, and the slow, almost imperceptible accumulation of wear on the red flannel of your Heidelberg electric belt. It's become a familiar, if somewhat peculiar, part of your life. Some mornings, you strap it on with the same unquestioning habit as lacing up your boots. Other days, particularly when the sun is shining and your spirits are naturally a little higher, it remains coiled in its box, a silent metallic serpent resting in its lair. The initial thrill of its electrogalvanic promise has certainly waned, replaced by a kind of resigned companionship. You've become quite adept at the subtle art of belt management. You know just how damp to make the flannel to avoid an uncomfortable sogginess while still, theoretically, enabling the vital current. You've perfected the discrete adjustment maneuver, a slight, almost imperceptible shrug and twist that settles the plates back into their optimal position against your lumbar region without alerting bystanders to your secret electrical life. You've even, on occasion, forgotten you're wearing it, only to be reminded by a faint, metallic tang in the air when you lean too close to a heat source, or the surprised look on your tailor's face when he's measuring you for a new waistcoat and encounters unexpected internal architecture. Just a back support, old chap, you'd mumble, a little embarrassed. The question of its actual efficacy remains a charmingly fuzzy area. Your lumbago still visits, an unwelcome but familiar guest, though perhaps its stays are a little shorter, its pronouncements a little less severe. Or is that wishful thinking? You've started to notice a pattern. On days when you feel generally optimistic and busy, the belt seems to work wonders. On gloomy, wet afternoons, when your mood is as gray as the London sky, the belt feels like nothing more than a damp, slightly heavy corset for the soul. This leads you to ponder the very nature of healing and belief. Does it truly matter if the current is real, or if the benefit comes from the ritual, the attention, the sheer power of expecting to feel better? It's a very 19th century conundrum, this dance between burgeoning science and age-old faith in the mysterious. You find yourself thinking, if you believe you're being gently zapped with nature's own nerve force, perhaps that belief itself is a kind of internal electricity, sparking a little placebo-powered wellness. You start to see more articles and discussions about electricity, not all of them as glowing as Professor Maxwell's advertisements. Mainstream historical fact, as the 19th century wore on and scientific understanding of electricity deepened, a more critical eye was sometimes cast on the wilder claims of medical electrotherapy. Respected medical journals began to differentiate more clearly between legitimate experimental uses and outright quackery. You might see a satirical cartoon in Punch magazine, perhaps depicting a figure festooned with wires and batteries, comically contorting as he receives his daily charge, with a caption poking fun at the public's gullibility. This doesn't necessarily stop the flood of advertisements, but it plants a small seed of doubt, a counter-narrative to the relentless optimism of the belt purveyors. One day, you come across an advertisement for a new, improved version of an electric belt, this one boasting double-strength magnets interwoven with the galvanic coils to harmonize the body's electromagnetic field. It sounds even more impressively scientific and even more baffling. It makes your simple zinc and copper Heidelberg model seem almost quaintly old-fashioned. It highlights a common trend of the era, the constant upgrading and addition of new bells and whistles, or magnets and coils, to existing patent remedies to maintain consumer interest. It's a bit like today, when a new phone comes out with 3 cameras instead of 2, and suddenly your perfectly good 2-camera phone feels inadequate. You also encounter a rather weird detail in a small newspaper clipping, a report of a man whose overland electric body battery, a particularly ambitious sounding device, apparently interfered with the workings of his newfangled telegraphic stock ticker machine whenever he stood too close to it, causing him to miss out on a crucial tip about railway shares. The article treated it as a curious anecdote, but it made you wonder about the unforeseen interactions of all this personal electricity being unleashed upon the world. Were tram conductors experiencing strange tingles? Were homing pigeons getting confused? Probably not, given the actual weakness of the currents, but it's a comical thought. You briefly imagine your own belt causing the spoons to levitate at Aunt Agatha's next tea party. That would certainly liven things up. Then there's the ongoing scholarly debate that you might read about in a more thoughtful journal or overhear between two scientifically minded gentlemen at your club. The true extent of harm versus help. Historians today continue to discuss this. While most of these simple galvanic belts were likely harmless in terms of direct physical danger, unlike some more aggressive electrical treatments or dangerous patent medicines, did they delay individuals from seeking more effective, conventional treatment for serious conditions? Or for minor aches and pains, did they provide genuine comfort, even if only through placebo, in an era when effective analgesics were limited? It's a complex balance sheet of benefit and burden. One afternoon, while rummaging in a drawer for a collar stud, you come across the original instruction booklet for your Heidelberg belt. It's looking a bit dog-eared, and there's a faint, brownish stain on the cover where you once spilled a cup of tea. You idly flips through the testimonials again. Mrs. Point of Bath and her nervous headaches, Mr. Q and his doubled oratorical powers. They seem like characters from a distant, more hopeful past. You notice the flannel on the belt itself is starting to look a little thin in places. The vibrant red faded to a more subdued, dusty rose. The metal discs, despite your attempts to keep them clean, show faint signs of corrosion, a greenish patina creeping around the edges of the copper. The vital current, it seems, might be getting a bit tired itself. You haven't been wearing it as much lately. A new liniment, recommended by Weatherby, who has since abandoned his magnetic chest protector in favor of a radioactive health water, a truly alarming development you try not to think too much about, seems to be providing a more noticeable, if temporary, relief for your back. The Heidelberg belt gradually transitions from a daily companion to an occasional thought, and then to something you rediscover with mild surprise when searching for something else. Ah, yes, you think, my electric belt. I wonder if it still smells of vinegar. It does faintly. The decline of these simple galvanic belts was inevitable as medical science progressed and the public became more discerning, or at least more aware of newer, more exciting fads. Mainstream historical fact, while more sophisticated forms of electrotherapy continued to develop and find legitimate medical niches, the era of the over-the-counter, cure-all electric belt slowly faded in the early 20th century, giving way to new miracle cures and eventually a more regulated medical marketplace. The sheer number of patents issued for such devices in the late 19th century, however, speaks volumes about their popularity and the entrepreneurial spirit, or opportunism, they represented. You might even hear of a prominent medical electrician being exposed as a fraud, his impressive qualifications revealed to be entirely fabricated, his scientific institute nothing more than a rented office and a very active imagination. Such scandals, while not immediately ending the trade, would certainly contribute to a growing public skepticism. You consider your own Mr. Faraday at the Electrotherapeutic Appliance Company. Was he a charlatan or just a man earnestly selling what he believed to be a beneficial product in an age of imperfect knowledge? You'll probably never know. You like to think he was sincere, if perhaps a little overenthusiastic, about the properties of zinc and copper. One day, during a bout of spring cleaning, you hold the Heidelberg electric belt in your hands. It feels like a relic from a slightly more naive period of your life. The red flannel is decidedly grubby. The buckles are a bit tarnished. It served its purpose, perhaps, even if that purpose was more psychological than physiological. It was a symbol of hope, a tangible action you could take against the invisible forces of ailment and fatigue. It was, in its own way, a very human response to a very human problem. You think about the guineas you spent. A new suit of clothes might have lasted longer, but it wouldn't have provided nearly as many opportunities for quiet, amused reflection or the chance to smell faintly of a pickling enterprise. You coil it up and place it carefully in an old wooden chest in the attic, alongside other discarded remnants of past enthusiasms. A phrenology chart that promised to reveal your character from the bumps on your head, a set of Indian clubs for manly exercise that mostly just gathered dust. It joins the quiet archive of things that once seemed terribly important. Maybe you think one of your great-grandchildren will find it someday and wonder what on earth this peculiar, metallic flanneled contraption was for. And perhaps they'll have a good, gentle laugh about the curious cures of the past. And so, your personal journey with the electric belt comes to a quiet, unassuming end. No dramatic cures, no shocking revelations. Just the gentle fading of a fad and the quiet wisdom that comes with experiencing the endless, hopeful, and sometimes faintly ridiculous human quest for well-being. Now, as the story of the electric belt winds down, let your own body and mind begin to unwind too. Let the images of gaslit streets, earnest inventors, and curious contraptions softly fade into the background. The hum of that imagined 19th century electricity can now give way to a deeper, more restful quiet. Feel the support beneath you, the gentle pressure of your bed holding you, comforting you. Notice the rhythm of your breath, flowing in, flowing out, a natural, easy tide. With each outward breath, allow any lingering tension in your shoulders, your jaw, your back to soften and release. Imagine a warm, gentle current, far more soothing than any Victorian belt, flowing through your limbs, easing any tightness, bringing a sense of profound relaxation. Your thoughts can drift like clouds in a calm sky, passing by without needing your attention. There is nothing to do, nothing to solve, just this moment of peace, this gentle descent into comfortable, restorative sleep. The world outside can wait. Tonight is for rest, for quiet, for renewal. Good night.